Hi, I'm Summer Ocean Wolf Cyprian, and this is Caleb Azor, and we're here on Oairaka. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following the story so far and for all your support. I'm really honored to be here with you today, Caleb, because you've lived this story. So can you tell us a little bit about you and how you even came to know about this and what your experience has been?
Okay. So I'm Caleb Azor of Ohirangi, also known as Pigeon Mountain. I live literally right across the road from Pigeon Mountain, so I couldn't live any closer. And I'm 17 years old, and I spent my entire life living there in the shadow of Pigeon Mountain. And I have a deep love and respect for trees and for nature and for living things generally. Um, So I first came to find out about the tree felling on I think it was Tuesday, the 2nd of April, earlier this year. Got a letter in my post box, just a normal happy day. Actually, a few days before, I had gone up on Ohirangi with my mum, and we've been spending time connecting with the trees there, and just trying to be as part of nature and be as with the trees as possible. And then on Tuesday the 2nd of April, we got the letter, and I was so shocked. I couldn't believe it. It took me a couple of hours just rereading it and just pacing back and forth, and just to actually realize it was real, because I couldn't believe it was actually real. I couldn't believe someone actually do that. I couldn't believe would actually happen, because I grew up there with the trees right there, and they were the stable thing. Trees live a lot longer than people, so I never thought I'd see the day those trees died. And so I got the letter and telling me that Monday the 8th of April they would come and begin cutting the trees down. And I just couldn't accept that. I just could not accept that was going to happen. So I immediately did everything I could, everything in my power to save the trees. So I got in contact with one of the members of the Te Punamanga Authority. I emailed him several times. I phoned him later on. I did end up phoning him several times, and it wasn't successful. And so I actually had a family holiday that had been planned months before, due for that weekend. I went. I didn't enjoy it at all because I was thinking about the trees, and unfortunately it meant that I was coming back on I think it was the 9th, so the next day, and I really wanted to be there before the felling began, but I wasn't able to be. And I came home, and there were these two huge blue gum eucalyptus. I believe they were blue gums, massive, beautiful trees, and I really loved those trees. I mean, I loved all the trees. I have a deep love and respect for all trees, but also the personal connection to the trees of Pigeon Mountain, and they were my friends, and those two blue gums were among the ones that were particularly special to me. And I came home, and they were gone. They were just gone. They just weren't there. And many other trees weren't there either. They were just gone, just stumps and everything taken away. And I just got out the car from right and just walked, and I just sort of just started to cry, and I cried and I cried, and I almost never cry, even when I'm in deep sadness. I usually don't cry, but just the shock and the pain at the trees just being gone I just cried, and I just wandered along onto the mountain, and they had been working along the boundary, cutting all those trees out, the non-native trees out the boundary, and many trees were gone. And I wandered along to, they were working on some, I believe they were acminas. There's several similar species, so I don't know exactly which species, but they were, I believe, acminas. And beyond them were 3 oaks. They were very unusual oaks. I have never seen any other oaks of that same type. And they were next. So I just went over to these trees, and they were right on the corner, and I hugged them, and I cried, and I said sorry to them that humans were going to do that to them, and that I'm a human and I feel guilty that I am a member of the species that is doing this, and that I feel like I should do more, but I couldn't, and just said sorry and goodbye to them, and then I went, and then my mum came, picked me up, and took me away, and told me afterwards that and anyway and then over the next few weeks they just kept cutting, and every night when they were gone, including that night, I would go up onto Ohirangi, and I would say goodbye to as many and sorry to as many of the trees as I could. Just tell them what was coming, and so they at least have a few days to know what was coming, and just, I guess, enjoy the end of their life.
Caleb, can I ask you?
Yeah.
No, don't be sorry.
Sorry, am I going to?
No. I'm so moved by what you're saying, and I'm so moved by your age, and this is your world that you're going to inherit. I'm 20 years older than you, and the fact that you recognize their sentience and actually escorted them into their next phase, it's just touching me so deeply. So I just really want to ask you, as someone who's standing in the doorway of their adulthood, what world do you want? Because these decisions, whether they're made in New Zealand or whether they're made where I come from, whether they're made for financial progress, whether they're made for some kind of cultural gain, whatever the rationale is by people who've already had their time, this is a world that you're going to inherit, and people your age are going to inherit. And we're 10 years away from maximum carbon. It's this is your time. What do you have to say about what's happening? Because you're inheriting the earth, not me. This is your generation. And I really want to honor the fact that there's an elderhood in you, that every night you would go to them like that. I feel the same. And I'm so moved that you just knew that. So tell me about your inheritance. Tell me about the world that's coming and what you want for us as people and for your generation.
Well, I'd like people to show nature the respect that it deserves, and particularly trees. I'm a very observant person, and I love trees. So when if I've driven down a road, I know every tree on that road, and I'll know if one's gone. So every time I see that a tree has been cut down, I mourn the loss of that tree, and just so angry that people went and just killed it, and I think, why? What, it was shading their front garden, or they wanted to extend one of their rooms, or they just didn't like it, or just stupid reasons. People just decided, we don't want that tree, and so they took its life with no respect, and it makes me so angry, that disrespect. So I want people to have respect for trees, the respect that trees deserve, the respect for life, the natural world and nature. And I want people to find a way in which we can live at peace with nature and not at war with it. Because I don't like that almost everything humans do is destructive to the natural world, and to nature, and I just feel guilty that I'm a member of the species that has gone and done all this harm in the world. And like, I don't associate with the views of the people doing that, but I'm still a human, and it's humans that do that, and so I feel guilty about that.
And so this is a really important piece, Caleb, and I feel like you are in a unique position to speak about it because you've lived it on one of these moments. And I felt the same as you when I found out. I'm like, I might be the only person, but I have to do everything I can. So what you're saying, and what I know to be true, and what I'm hearing from so many different people, is this idea that separation doesn't equal survival. We can't go forward into a world where global warming is rife. I was on a Zoom call today with people I'm in professional relationships with in Australia, and the fires that are ripping through right now. And the reality of one of them, she's like, I don't know if I'll have a home later. These fires are happening all over the world. Our climate is changing. I don't believe, this is me, I don't believe any of us are going to get out of this with separatist views, because we need to all work together. We need to all work together to achieve, sorry, my dog is pulling my arm, to achieve climate goals and to make changes. And at this point in our history, for me, logically, it's like every tree matters more than ever. For sequestering carbon, for protecting the water table, for giving home to species, not just native species, but to life, to the birds that disperse seeds, to the insects that pollinate. It's really a moment where we're getting a call to the intersectionality and the synergy of life. And so I'm really curious, like, were you born like this? Because I was.
Yes.
Did you come out of the womb knowing that this mattered?
I think so.
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to nature and the living world, and you know, my interests have always been with living things. When I was very young, it's probably more to do with like insects and animals, to do with the plants and trees.
Yeah.
But it's always been all nature.
Yeah.
But as I've got older, it feels to me almost like not like I'm changing, but that I'm realizing. So as I've got older,
Like a
I've been
deepening.
drawn deeper and further to trees, and I have this deeper understanding and respect and love and value of trees. And so it's like, you know, I've always loved nature, and then sort of slowly I've been coming to realization that it's really that what I most love is the trees. I love all nature, but it's like trees to me are just this most wonderful thing, and they're the most wonderful thing in the world.
Thank you.
I
love that. So I'm aware of time,
Yeah.
and I'm aware of people's ability to stay with the conversation.
Yeah, I know.
So I have one kind of last piece, and that is, what's happened? What does the mountain feel like now? Now that all the trees that aren't native are gone, what has changed in the landscape, in the energetic? I want to thank you for being the shaman of those trees, to escort them, to like pray for them, to show up and apologize to them. But tell us what's left behind for the people that go there, for the birds that were there. What's different?
Well, I'll first comment as to my deep regret is that I didn't actually manage to say goodbye to all of them. There was areas that were fenced off, and half the trees cut down already, and some that were cut down before I could, and particularly, like I said, those 2 deer, eucalyptus. Well, I mean, before it was this beautiful place, and you could just feel life and nature and just this peaceful presence of trees. Trees always have this peaceful presence. And there was this one tree, this huge old macrocarpa, and it had a very strong presence, and you could feel its power. This tree, this life of this tree. It was very old, and every time I walk into its presence, I could feel it. And that's always been the case. So, like I say, I've always had this feeling of the trees. Just realized it more, and yeah, it was a beautiful tree. And so before, it was this beautiful place full of life. It felt alive, and I felt a deep spiritual connection to and love of it and to it, of the trees and the mountain itself, the manga, and the second to last day, they came with the helicopter and they cut down the trees on the slope facing my house. And one of those trees was that massive old macrocarpa. And to me, it was like always like that tree was sort of like the heart of the community. I don't know if you have such a tree here, but
There's a few,
that tree just sort of had particular presence, and it always felt like it was the heart of the mountain and of the whole community of trees and all the wildlife there. And that day, they came with the helicopter and they cut down those trees, including that tree. And so before, I could feel the life and the love and the connection and the respect and the value and all that was so strong. And as the process went on, it got weaker and weaker, and I could just feel like it was dying.
Yes.
And yeah, almost like being within animals, it's dying and it's life draining away. But when they cut down that tree, it just died. I could feel it die. The next day they came and they cut a little bit more. They cut down a couple more pines. But that day the mountain died. I could feel it die. And since then it's felt dead. And walking there is death and despair and sadness. And I feel like the native trees that are left, they feel sad and they miss the others. There used to be a lot of bird life there. We used to even have a moorpork.
Yeah, we have lots here.
It's gone.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're all gone.
I'm sure.
And so we had moorporks, we had fantails, grey warblers,
Yeah, we have all those.
tuis, and those were lots of beautiful native birds. And we also had two non-native. Well, we had a lot of non-native species as well, but two that were quite unique here were the eastern rosellas.
We have them too.
They nested wild there.
Yeah.
And magpies.
Yeah, we've got them.
And I love those birds. The magpies actually used to nest in that great conifer.
Wow.
And they've all left, all of them. And I know that they are alive and, well, I wouldn't say well, they've lost their homes, but they're still there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not there, they're still alive.
Somewhere.
But and I know that because I can see them in the neighborhood, but not on the mountain.
Yeah, but they're suffering.
They're in my garden, they're in other places, and they sort of, they're refugees.
I understand,
actually. And what's worse here is this time of year,
they're babies.
they can't just fly away.
No, they won't leave their children. They won't.
And in the end, the babies will die.
Yes.
And they do love their babies.
Yes, of course.
The parent birds, you can see they're caring for their babies, and how the blackbird parents will cry when the cat catches the chick, and I've seen that all, and so I know that they really do love each other like human parents love their children.
Maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more.
Maybe more. Thank you, Caleb.
And so,
Thank
I
you.
felt it die, and it's dead now.
Yeah. Well.
And it looks dead, and it feels dead. Yeah.
What if you could distill it to a sentence or two? What message would you have for people who live here in Auckland? What do you want them to know?
It's hard. All my deep views on trees and things fit down into a few sentences.
What's the heart of it? What's the essence?
I think we need to learn to love and respect nature, and particularly trees, and to work with nature and give it the respect it deserves. One thing we do is we go humans and nature. There's no humans in nature, there's just nature.
We are nature.
We are part of nature, but we are like the bit of nature that's gone crazy and turned on everything else.
Yeah.
And so we need to stop that. We need to go back into our place in nature and just respect nature and love nature and trees and just go back to being connected to nature and being part of nature, because we are, but we sort of run away from that because it doesn't suit us, or whatever it is. People just don't want to be part of nature. Yeah.
Thank you for your time and your story and your honesty and your courage and your heart and your love and all that you did. I'm so grateful to have met you, and your story has moved me so much. Thank you.